Hello, and welcome to a very special deprogrammed interview. I'm very honored for today's guest. I told him beforehand I'm a little nervous because once I started reading about him and watching some videos, I greatly respect this man, um, and I'm very honored that he's here. And so once I tell people that I'm nervous, the nerves go away. So that's why I'm doing that. Okay. We are about to welcome Mr. Marcus Allen. Marcus is a veteran intelligence professional with over 20 years of distinguished service in national security. A former United States Marine, Allen transitioned to working as an FBI staff operations specialist within the intelligence program and critical incident operations specialist in the crisis management program. His exceptional contributions were recognized in 2019 when he was named FBI Charlotte, that's Charlotte, North Carolina, Employee of the Year. Allen's career took a dramatic turn when he became known as one of the January 6 whistleblowers, raising concerns about the FBI's misuse of the security clearance process to silence dissent. After sharing information questioning aspects of the January 6 narrative, including the role of government agents in the crowd, Allen faced accusations of disloyalty and had his clearance revoked, leaving him unable to work for over 2 years. Despite significant financial and personal hardships, Allen pursued justice, achieving a landmark settlement that restored his clearance and awarded him back pay. He now stands as a powerful advocate for accountability and transparency in government institutions. Please welcome Mr. Marcus Allen.
Hey,
Hello, Marcus.
hey, how's it going? Thank you for having me on the show today, and God bless you.
Thank you for being here. I just reading your bio and watching some of your testimony, I kind of got goosebumps, and I'll tell you why. I don't often see people in the public eye, be they politicians or pundits or people in journalism, who have the sincerity that you seem to have. And I wanted to just ask you off the, you know, do you do you find that there are a lot of people with good intentions who go into politics?
Um, I would disagree with that. There probably are some, and if they do start out in politics, they found out very quickly that it's really difficult to, achieve the ideals that they're after. I've spoken, with some politicians, and they're not in politics anymore, but they just found it incredibly difficult to try to achieve anything other than okay, we're exposing corruption and that sort of thing, but what are we actually doing about it? And just that frustration in and of itself was enough for them to, leave national level politics and then see what they could do at their local or state level because they just honestly felt like they could maybe achieve more at that level than at the federal level. So I think even if there are idealists that do make it into politics, it's very difficult to achieve positive ends because there's a lot of coalition building that has to occur. And in that coalition building, you're fighting against lobby groups, you're fighting against entrenched politicians who've been there for decades, which is a problem.
And what about you? What led you to want a career with the Federal Bureau of Investigation?
Yeah, so straight out of high school, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. I had several classmates who also enlisted along with me. And I scored well enough on the aptitude test to get into intelligence. So that's how I made my break into the intelligence field was via the United States Marine Corps, which the training I received there pretty much propelled me through the rest of my career. It's top flight training, and I don't think I encountered any other training. Maybe a short stint at DIA, I got some training, but other than that, the majority of my intelligence training came via the Marine Corps, and that carried me throughout my career. So I was part of Operation Iraqi Freedom, so the initial invasion into Iraq, when a bunch of us thought we weren't invading until about 48 hours before we invaded. Then
Mm.
President Bush W came on the TV and said, we're invading within 48 hours unless you comply, which was a shock to all of us because we all started looking at one another. We all started looking at one another on the southern side of the border, like, wait a minute, he's talking about us. So all the drills and everything that we had been doing, thinking that it was just going to be a show of force, ended up actually, now we all know, turning into a real invasion, which I was a part of. So I worked intelligence throughout that, throughout that time frame, attached to the 1st Marine Division. We went to Ramadi, Fallujah, just south of Baghdad, Al-Hilla, and a lot of what we did was counterinsurgency operations, but then it morphed into counterterrorism or operations, which I liked. I liked going from studying entire army units. They call it order of battle analysis, to where you're studying an opposing force. You're looking at their different units, how their units fight, what type of equipment they have, and then you're just processing all this different intelligence information that's coming at you to try to decipher what's happening. So we shifted from that to a more identities-based, individual focused, terrorism analysis. You're looking at the individual people themselves, what organizations they may be affiliated with, and who their networks are, and trying to disassemble those networks. So I cut my teeth doing that in the Marine Corps after we shifted from counterinsurgency operations known as coin ops. And I really enjoyed that. And I figured once my time with the Marine Corps was done, the place I was going to be able to do that, but on American soil, was within the FBI, because that falls within the Federal Bureau of Investigation's mission set, counterterrorism on American soil. The primary player in that is the FBI. There's other partners in the process as well. But the FBI is the lead dog when it comes to counterterrorism on American soil. And so I knew if I stayed in the military, I was just going to be living in the Middle East perpetually, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to do that type of work in the States, and the FBI was the place to be. So after several years bouncing around other different alphabets in the intelligence community in the Washington, D.C. area, I eventually got on board with the FBI, initially around 2008. And I worked for them from 2008 to 2010 as a contractor. And then I got on board as a full-time employee with them at the Charlotte field office in 2015. And that's where I was employed until I got canceled Thanksgiving week of 2021.
So that's how you refer to it, is when you got canceled. That's
Yep.
interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely believe it was an internal cancel job. There are a lot of people that can talk about the long march to the institutions a lot better than I can. But essentially, there's been an ideological battle, a spiritual battle of some sorts going on within the country for a long while now. We're both Christians, faith-filled people, so we know the battle between good and evil is constantly raging. But it's interesting to me how much of this stuff is spiritual, and it's almost like, pop culture reference here. There's a line from Pirates of the Caribbean where one of the villains essentially talks about the immaterial becoming material. Some of this stuff is so straight out in your face evil, you can't but wonder, like, this is pretty much direct demonic inspiration that this person is acting off of. And some of them may be aware of it, and a lot of them likely not.
Yeah. That's amazing. I do think of it over time. I started to think of it as well as a spiritual war, not just a cultural war that we're in the middle of. And then there are even several atheists I know who, for whatever reason, haven't been able to make that leap of delight to, accept Christ as their personal savior, who haven't been able to make that leap of delight of what if there is a creator. Yet they agree that this is a spiritual war, which I find so interesting. Isn't that interesting?
Right. Yeah. How is it spiritual? Like, well, is there a creator? Like, is there an inception?
Yeah.
Is like
Well, that's like God. I think they're wrestling with the idea of God. It's almost like how some
Yeah.
people come to see. I was one of those people who came to be able to observe evil and identify and say that is evil before I was ever able to accept that there might be, if there's evil, then there's a possibility of a God. There's a possibility of good as well,
Right. Right. Yeah, there's an expression in the Catholic faith, nullus diabolus, nullus redemptor, no devil, no redeemer. So if you don't believe in an evil one, why do you need redemption?
Oh,
Yeah. So there's
I've never
a
heard that.
phrase for
Thank
you.
you.
Nullus diabolus, nullus redemptor. No
Wow,
devil, no
thank you so
redeemer.
much.
Yeah.
So let me pull up this since you talked about this internal cancellation. And by the way, when you were speaking of the cultural war, spiritual war, however people want to think of it, I thought for a second when you said you went from counterintelligence kind of view then they started doing an identity-based view. I thought at first you were about to talk about DEI. Then I realized you were talking about, no, it's about the identity of who the terrorists are.
Right,
I
yeah,
thought-
yeah,
and
yeah.
then
With
we
different type
switched.
of different type of identity analysis here. Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah, coin ops, counterinsurgency versus counterterrorism operations. We really kind of dropped the ball there. I mean, not to specifically talk about the Iraq War, but with the Ba'ath Party, we essentially criminalized a bunch of them. And what's naturally going to happen with a bunch of former intelligence and security officials and military trained guys when you essentially rob them of their livelihood? Like, okay, yeah, they were part of the Ba'ath Party, but how many of them were card carrying members of the Ba'ath Party just because that was the ruling party? And if you wanted to participate in that section of the military or whatever, you had to be a part of it. So there could have been a process there where they maybe could have filtered out some of the more hardcore people and then just employed the rest of them rather than essentially putting them all out on the street. And then now you've got this entire cadre of guys who are highly skilled building IEDs and, running little insurgent networks and that sort of thing.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
But yeah,
I
there's
wanted.
identity politics in the Bureau too.
Oh, there's that too. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny that I thought I just that's become so common. I thought that's where we were going for a second. So I'm going to pull up the speech now. A lot of people are familiar with the speech. It went viral. This is a message that you had prepared for the House Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. And this happened in September of 2024. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So just to preface this, before I play this, can you give us a timeline of exactly what had happened before this?
Yep.
Let me take it off again. Sorry.
Yep. So this is pretty much, I mean, I wouldn't say my, I guess, adversarial in conflict stance with the FBI is going to ever end. It's kind of the thing that just keeps lingering on. But this was a large part of the end of that particular portion of the battle, so to speak. This is coming on the heels of almost 3 years of being, persecuted, canceled by the Bureau. This is the second hearing that I've participated in. The first hearing was from May of 2023. That one I was at the hearing with Tristan Levitt from Empower Oversight, Steve Friend, and Garrett O'Boyle, who are other whistleblowers who are canceled by the FBI as well. There's a whole bevy of us. If you go to Suspendables USA, you'll literally see a whole list of people there, and that's not even all the people because there are some who are not public. But essentially, this hearing was kind of like the tail end of my saga of being canceled by the FBI. They wanted me to talk about what happened to my family, and it was also supposed to wrap up whether the FBI, the footprint of its involvement in January 6th, which was at the heart of my whistleblowing. Was I didn't believe the FBI director was being truthful about the conduct of FBI personnel at the Capitol that day, or the actual footprint of FBI personnel at the Capitol that day, which was at the heart of my whistleblowing. Was that I didn't think he was being truthful in his exchange on Capitol Hill in March of 2021 with Senator Klobuchar. So this is the tail end of that. And I didn't even know that I was going to be able to speak or even be given the floor to, provide my commentary here. This is all done by Congressman Bishop himself. So this is truly what we're getting ready to watch, a Holy Spirit moment. There was no meeting beforehand between me and Congressman Bishop or anyone else saying, we're going to give you this 5-minute window to speak your piece, because the hearing had kind of turned into the Democrats doing a hit job on Project 2025, which was not even the focus of the hearing at all. It was like a straw man that they literally just popped up so they could get through the hearing, because here was a guy sitting in front of them who literally had been ideologically targeted by the FBI, which is what they crow about all the time. But they didn't want to hear about it because the cancellation was in their favor. So they essentially
Yes.
were essentially trying not to give me any floor time, because it's like, mercy, here's a black, like, not only is he a whistleblower, but he's a black Catholic Christian conservative, everything that's the antithesis of our whole diabolical movement. Like, we can't let this guy's message get out, which in my opinion is why I haven't been interviewed by, say, MSNBC or NBC or any of these big mainstream outlets, is because I am literally flesh and blood, the counter to the evil that they're trying to perpetrate against the American people through propaganda, through the power of the press, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So this is all Holy Spirit inspired. I'm sorry I went on that long
No, I
rant.
love
I
it.
need you to have the full background here. This whole thing is Holy Spirit, even down to the words I put on the paper. I prayed about this a long time, and God literally gave me the signal grace months in advance. You're going to get another opportunity on the Hill, and you need to be ready to speak when that opportunity comes. You're not going to know how it exactly materializes, but when it does, you need to be ready. And so this is the commentary I had at the ready when the moment came. And I had no idea Congressman Bishop was even getting ready to do what he just did.
To give you the floor.
Right.
You're right. By the way, I just ask if there's any viewers, and I know I occasionally get viewers who are from the left, where I used to be, where I used to reside. And
Right.
I would just ask you to imagine that you've got an ex FBI agent, decorated Marine, who is a whistleblower, but it's under the Trump administration. Don't you think the media would be wanting to talk to him and to let him, talk about what happened to him and his story? I just ask you to kind of switch some of the details, and what would you think about that? So that's for my leftist viewers. Okay, here we go.
And I recognize myself for 5 minutes. And Mr. Allen, I'm going to give you a little notice. You've written some notes. As far as I'm concerned, you're the person I'm most interested in hearing from. I'm from Charlotte. I've been to the Charlotte field office. I know some people there. I was extraordinarily impressed by you and the other whistleblowers when you previously appeared before the subcommittee. I'm impressed by you again. I haven't been able to be here the whole time. I'm going to yield you some time, just if you have things that you wish to say in just a moment. But the first thing I'm going to say before I do that, and then I'm going to give Mr. Jordan the rest of my time, is I'm just overwhelmingly troubled by the fact that no one seems to be able to do much about what has happened to you.
Yeah.
You got the Inspector General, very respectable person. You've done a lot of things that have been historic, but you issue a management alert. And to me, it sounds ridiculous to say you don't think these guys at the FBI, the senior managers, understand that they shouldn't retaliate against somebody by putting them under extreme personal hardship while they engage in a completely baseless persecution over their security clearance, and they leave them in limbo for 27 months, and to this moment haven't paid what I understand to be the consideration under the settlement that's been reached. That is astonishing. And if that's not astonishing enough, that all you can do is issue an alert. Congress does absolutely nothing. In the majority party, not one thing to impose on the Department of Justice or the FBI an appropriate sanction for what they've done. And we have a hearing about it, and everybody in the minority party, they're fearing what Donald Trump would do in the next administration, while they sit here and they look at the guy who's been persecuted by the FBI. And everybody in the room understands it. Mr. Allen, do you have comments you wish to make? I'll give you about a minute and a half, and then I want to turn the rest of my time to Mr. Jordan.
Yes, sir. I would just say that I consider the hearing today my last act of service as a public servant for the United States of America. And I'll give you my professional opinion. I was an intel professional for our country for many years, and I would give recommendations, and I'd also look at indications and warnings. So I would offer this to the American people as my warning to them. Says this is a warning to the American people. I say, I personally have no confidence that the FBI will rein in its own conduct. I've been persecuted along with Garrett, Steve and Kyle, and countless other whistleblowers. It is my opinion that the Bureau used reprisal and fear to control the workforce. It has been a seemingly effective tactic. I personally believe that there are no current effective checks and balances against them conducting lawless action with any type of correction in a legitimate time frame. I welcome the work of the IG, but I think any type of lawless action, there's no legitimate time frame to rein them back in. Their ability to overclassify information can allow them to stonewall forever. To the American people, you have a duty as a citizen to vote, and I strongly urge you to do so.
It's how you participate in the American experience. I know people have doubts about election integrity, but you must vote. It is your claim. Stake your claim and don't forfeit it willingly. Have your voice heard. My other recommendations are in the natural order. First, vote. The second is the Second Amendment. Arm yourself and know how to defend yourself. Make 3 to 4 friends in your neighborhood and promise to come to each other's mutual aid in times of hardship. And during the Great Depression, people stocked up a pantry. So I think that's a good practice, especially in our economic times, and make sure you have 3 to 4 months of food. As a person of faith, I'd say pray the rosary, go to the First Friday devotions. That's for everybody, all my brothers and sisters of all faiths, and I know I'm Catholic, and read the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and live it every day. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for the time.
Wow.
You know, Mr. Allen, the fact that there are servants like you who have borne up under persecution that a lot of political leaders in this country do not care about is the thing that heartens the American people. And I'm confident the American people will resolve the situation, no matter how weak Washington is in response. Mr. Jordan, I'm sorry to.
Wow. It still gives me goosebumps watching that. And there's so many things I want to ask you about. First, I do want to get into the details of why they retaliated against you. If we can start there, and then I want to get into some elements of what you said during your allotted time. Is that okay?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so the official on paper reason that they gave me in January of 2022 was that they were suspending me for conspiratorial views in regards to the events of January 6th. And they were questioning my allegiance to the United States of America because I essentially had a different viewpoint of what went down that day than what the predominant theme was within the walls of the FBI. Mind you, I work in an analytical role where we're essentially paid to give our viewpoints on what's going on. So whether or not you agree with the viewpoint or not, it's offered. Initially, I thought I was basically being canceled by the organization because of my vaccination status. I looked at the vaccination program as a government overreach, that they shouldn't be forcing people to take the vaccination.
Yep.
Also, internally, what they were doing was they were having people attest to their vaccination status. And there was a database that everyone was supposed to put their data, essentially their vaccination status into, like your personally identifiable medical information, which I surmised on the face is they're not a doctor's office. They're not a medical establishment. Like, what are we just like surrendering our HIPAA rights here? What's going on? And then I saw some of the lawyer language at the front end of this database, and essentially it was exonerating them. So it was giving the guise of you had to participate in this, but by participating in this, you are also surrendering your rights to privacy of that medical information. And if anything, if there was any negative fallout from participating, that you would not hold them liable. So I'm like, so you're holding.
It's not voluntary. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so you're kind of holding a gun to my head that I have to participate in this. But if anything bad happens, then I can't hold you liable for anything bad that happens. And also, you're not going to use this database to retaliate against people because of their vaccination status. Sure. So I have very limited counterintelligence experience, but I have some. And, I'm familiar with the Long March to the institutions. I'm familiar with China and other adversaries knowing that they had to attack us culturally and use, part of their mantra is strangle you with your own system. So they're going to study your system and how your system of governance works, and they're going to figure out how to operate within your system of government in order to defeat you versus the traditional kinetic warfare of, an invasion with tanks and artillery pieces and jet fighters and that sort of thing. So very much a cultural warfare approach is their approach. Going to the universities, changing the mindset at the universities, corrupting government officials with honeypots, putting money in government officials' back pockets through these different conferences and visitations overseas to China and that sort of thing. So immediately I thought to myself, like, okay, we're getting pretty in bed with China here. There's allegations of the director's dealings when he was with King and Spalding being in charge of China's accounts while he was a member of King and Spalding. Like, this looks to me, my general sense after being in intelligence for years was, this looks like something communists would do to clean out the ranks of people who are non-compliant with overreaching programs. So, I mean, I said all that just to highlight alarm bells are going off in my head on multiple reasons. Why am I surrendering personal medical information? Why is the FBI collecting this type of medical information from its personnel outside of a regular, medical process? You go into your local provider or whatever, and then having the whole thing be voluntary.
Yes.
So multiple alarm bells going off in that regard. And then just the thought crossed my mind, like, this looks like something communists would do. Figure out who's not going to go along with the program. These are going to be the non-compliant people. They know they're probably going to draw some ire from the organization. This will be a good way to get rid of the people in the organization who actually have backbone to stand up against something that's not right. It's a big compliance. In a way, it's a compliance test. So I told my management before the deadlines for any of these things, I was like, I'm not going along with the vaccination program. I was like, and I'm not participating in this database, which looks straight out communist. So there was nobody in, they should not have been surprised. If they were surprised, it's their own fault. I told them on multiple occasions, I'm not doing this. People in my general work area knew I wasn't going to go along with it, because they were coming back after they got their shots, doing their little happy dance and flexing their arms and that sort of thing, trying to, I guess, influence me somehow to go get the shots. And I'm just like, whatever.
Did they give you a free donut?
No, I didn't even get the free donuts or anything that they ran out and got. So initially my fight or, conflict with the FBI started over the vaccination program. They sent out a enterprise-wide email right around Thanksgiving of 2021 that if you hadn't complied with the vaccination program by that point, you were no longer welcome in FBI space. So I took that to heart, and my last day in the office was literally the Monday of Thanksgiving week 2021. Got into a very, I don't want to say weird, but management called and they were talking to me, what's going on? I think they were all surprised that I wasn't going to go along with the program. There were several other people in the office, maybe more, who felt uncomfortable about it, but they saw the pressure being exerted internally by the organization. And so they eventually just caved. I knew people who were like, well, things are going to not go so well for me here if I don't get the shot, so I may as well just go get the shot. So coercion. People who otherwise would not have done it, feeling the pressure from the organization as well as some peers in the building, but not everybody. Well, I may as well get the shot or things are going to not work out well for me and I'm not going to be able to put food on the table and that sort of thing.
I have to interrupt just for a second. It's stoking some of my old anger about those years. And like you said, this is a compliance test, and it wasn't just a compliance test at the FBI. It was a compliance test society-wide.
Right.
And to see, this is how it happens. This is how it works. Like, how do you get people? We look back, I think we tend to, we think of ourselves as so evolved and as a species, and we look back at different times of history and say, why would people go along with certain things? Well, we got to see a real life example of that unfolding around us, and the things that we went along with. It's like the stakes in the grand scheme of things. Yes, the stakes were high for a lot of people. You could lose your job if you didn't comply. But I find it kind of amazing that we saw people like the stakes weren't you're going to get killed immediately, like put on to, you know what I mean? Like people complied, and the stakes weren't what they could be in the future.
Right.
And it worked. And and
Right.
so it was an amazing thing to live through and to witness and to better understand human psychology, I guess. So what you're describing, thank you for describing that again. Okay, so they put you on leave.
Yep, they put me on administrative leave initially, and then they sent out one of the HR units sent out essentially an email saying I was going to be put on to AWOL status. So they were going to put me on this absent without leave status, and I was going to go and be unpaid until the situation was resolved. So I started a back and forth process with them in December of 2021. So I had 30 days to reply. They sent out a list of questions for me to respond to. Why are you not going along with the program? XYZ. It's basically an opportunity for me to state my case. So I responded, I don't know, maybe like a 10 or 12 page letter or something like that, just giving multiple examples of negative consequences of the vaccination program. Other doctors and whatnot that were saying we need to slow our roll on this thing, so to speak. We need to not be going full tilt into this thing. We have no idea what this is going to do to people, what kind of negative outcomes they're going to be. There's already some trials saying that there's negative outcomes. So I basically offered all that in my, defense or my stance in regard to the vaccination. I submitted that right around New Year's Eve, so right near the deadline. And then I got a call from my supervisor about a week later, and what happened? They were trying to set up a meeting, and I was under the impression that the meeting was going to be about my vaccination status. We're going to find a way for you to come back to work, or we're going to come up with some kind of reasonable accommodation so that you can work, that sort of thing. When the meeting actually occurred, my supervisor wasn't there. The chief security officer from the building and one of the assistant special agents in charge was at the meeting. My attorneys and I at the time, we referred to it as the infamous Cracker Barrel meeting, because we met in the parking lot of a Cracker Barrel across from a theme park. And
Not at the barrel.
Yeah, so it's across from this Carowinds is the name of the theme park. So
I'm from South Carolina. I know what you're talking about. Okay.
yeah,
Carowinds.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so that Cracker Barrel there, that's where the infamous meeting and cancellation of Marcus went into full effect. We were supposed to have coffee because I thought we were going to have breakfast just to talk about the overall situation. But the chief security officer and the ASAC, assistant special agent in charge, they got out of the vehicle and they literally read that letter off to me saying I was being suspended from the FBI indefinitely due to conspiratorial views in regards to January 6th. And it was at that specific point that I lawyered up. So again, signal grace, because the workings of the Spirit are prevalent throughout this whole thing. That's a major part of my story too, which is probably why I haven't gotten on any of the mainstream outlets. Is there's a lot of government minutia in my story, but the workings of the Holy Spirit and faith are predominant in my story. And I know a lot of outlets don't want to talk about faith whatsoever, but that's the grand central, which is why it's the grand central piece of my story, for people to get right with God while they still have time.
Yes.
And so I got canceled, read the letter, and at that point, my wife was like, "Yeah, we need a lawyer up here." So we lawyered up at that point, and it was funny. The initial lawyers I signed up with were federal security clearance lawyers because it was my clearance which was being suspended indefinitely. So I was like, okay, we need to defend the clearance. And they told me, well, we don't usually get involved on the front end of it like this. We wait until it's actually been revoked. But we think they might actually just be using the process to punish you. And on its face, the claim is so ridiculous. They're basically making a First Amendment claim. And they're like, what do you do for them again? And I'm like, I'm an intelligence analyst. And they're like, okay, but you don't work terrorism matters at all. I'm like, no, I do work terrorism matters. And they're like, oh, okay, but you don't have any role working domestic terrorism matters at all. And I'm like, no, I actually do have a role working domestic terrorism matters. I'm like, so the matters upon which I speak, I literally am employed by the FBI to speak about. And they didn't like my opinion, and so I'm being canceled. At least that's what they wrote. That's what they wrote on paper. And then the lawyers they were incredulous. And then they bounced it around their firm and they said, there's no way that an actual attorney could have written this letter. They're like, but it's from the organization. Your executives gave it to you. It's on official organizational letterhead. They're like, we're surprised they even let this letter get outside the walls of the building. They're like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. And then they said, no self-respecting attorney would put their name on this letter. That's how ridiculous this is. Yeah. So I mean, that's that's just an example of the impunity with which FBI security officials and executives act. There's a lot of hubris there. So they think they can just do whatever they want and nobody's going to hold them accountable. Right now, it's looking kind of looking that way.
Like
I'm not here to black. I'm not here to black pill everybody, but
look, you gotta have you. I think you have to be black pill before you can be white pilled. So go right ahead.
Right. Yeah. So it's just like, yeah, there's not really that much punishment that's happened with any of the perpetrators in any of these situations. Like, okay, they got let go from the organization. They're working for some contractor now, making six figures. They're on some TV set somewhere. Like, they took a parachute into some corporate job. I mean, some of the places that got reported on for, conduct, contrary to the will of the American people, they're employing FBI people right now. Even some of the people that were part of my cancellation and other whistleblowers cancellations, like, they're on TV, they're working in corporate America, they're making six-figure salaries somewhere. Like, nothing happened to them,
Let me ask you, because I've read some articles about you and some of the other former FBI whistleblowers having met with Kash Patel, who is on record having said, the FBI itself is a primary functionary of the deep state, that he wanted to make the FBI headquarters into a museum of the deep state. Well, now that he's in charge of the FBI, and I'm not asking you to, be overly, just being fair, you still think there's not going to be any kind of, no one's going to be held accountable?
I mean, as far as I can tell from what I've seen, nobody's really being held accountable. There's executives, I mean, you've seen in the news, who've been walked out or shown the door, but, being forced into early retirement is not really punishment. Like,
Yeah.
Retaliating against people and, like, destroying their lives or livelihoods, destroying them financially, that's not okay. You have to early retire. Like, these people need to be criminally charged. Like,
There needs to be an investigation. And
Right.
Yeah.
What did you do? Why did you do it? And then there needs to be appropriate charges levied against these people for what they did. And my opinion, I don't foresee that happening. So that's something the American people are just going to have to stomach. Like, there's not really going to be any full-scale accountability at the Bureau, in my opinion, despite, folks getting put in charge who you would think would be able to fix the process. There are so many in the senior executive service, and there are so many ideologues within the walls of the Bureau. All they're going to do is wait these guys out. They're going to wait till there's an administrative change, and then they're going to still be there doing what they were doing before. So, I mean, that's the general consensus amongst, they might be able to get some of the people out, but they're not going to be able to get all of them out. And it's so, outside of a revival and, like, an actual, I think of, for our nation, like, a center of gravity being the adherence to Christian principles and virtue. And even if you don't want to call yourself outright a Christian in general, you need to at least adhere to virtue. And unless we're like a virtuous people, we're not going to stand. Like, we can't have people, retaliating against people based on ideology or non-compliance with overreaching government programs. I could go on for days. I don't think they're going to get the job done. I mean, outside of shutting the place down, I don't think it's going to happen.
What do you think the problem is? And I recognize there might be some things you can't say, or maybe you can say whatever you want now. I don't know. I tend to think there's an old Bill Hicks joke. Do you know the comedian Bill Hicks?
Yep.
Okay. There's an old joke of his, and my husband and I my husband's read a lot about the Kennedy assassination and other, things that are quote unquote conspiracy theories. And we kind of we like the old Bill Hicks joke where he's like, I think when you are elected president, the three-letter different agencies take you into a room and show you an angle of the Kennedy assassination that's never been seen before. And then they say, any questions? And so you realize you are not in control. You may be the president, but there are people that you answer to. So as a plebe, as a normie, I'm asking you, because I respect your opinion, what do you think the problem is? Is it that there are shadowy agencies we don't know about? Is it that there are too many people who are not virtuous, who are in the halls of power? Is it that the system itself is just beyond repair, or I don't know?
I think it's a spiritual deadness in the country. I think whatever they tried, with the long march to the institutions has been mostly successful. I mean, it's what I said before. I think there needs to be a re-evangelization of the country, or maybe a first-time evangelization. And people have to act according to Christian principles and virtue.
Yeah.
That's that's the answer, and that's what people don't want to do. And you would think, like with organizations like the FBI, the joke in the past. My wife worked for the FBI for a long time. She stepped down in 2015. My father-in-law, may he rest in peace, he was an agent for a long time. He was one of the last classes to go through the FBI Academy in Washington, D.C. before it moved to Quantico, while J. Edgar Hoover was still the director of the FBI. He was in from about 71 through about 1997, 98. And the joke with the FBI used to be it was filled with nothing but, Catholics, Mormons, and, a smattering of Southern Baptists. So you knew like you weren't going to get anything by these guys, but that's not really the place anymore. The air in the FBI changed quite a bit post 9/11. And I think a lot of these guys figured out that there's a lot of power to be wielded with information. So, the Bill Hicks, joke or commentary is not that far off the mark. We have a massive federal government, a million plus federal employees, 432 by last count federal agencies. Maybe they've slashed some since the current administration's been in, but within the past year it was 432 federal agencies. So like our administrative state is gigantic, and really for a lot of things it's bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, who are really calling the shots on things. And the attitude is, we don't care who's in the White House, they're going to be gone in 4 years, or they're going to be gone, or they're going to be gone in 8 years, and we're still going to be here. And these people wield an enormous amount of power, and they're unelected. Bureaus roughly 40,000 strong. Agencies got a bevy of personnel. There's 17, which our audience probably doesn't know, is there's 17 member agencies of the United States intelligence community. So there's some overlap. There's some overlap, and then there's 17.
Okay.
And there's some overlap. And each of the military services has its own native component as well, which is where intelligence springs from, is from defense, from the military. But outside of the military, it's grown. World War II was a big part of the growth. CIA sprang forth from World War II. They had the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, National Security Act, created a lot of the agencies. So, I mean, that's a lot of people with, top secret, not everybody, but there's a lot of folks with top secret SCI security clearances that have information that can be extremely damaging to the country and are running operations which may or may not be off the books, which everyone doesn't necessarily know about. Because even, I can tell you within the FBI, there's a lot of compartmentalization. So like even within our own building in Charlotte, like I don't know what the guys on the second floor are doing. I work on the fourth floor. I know what I'm doing. And I may not even know fully what's up with the guys on the other wing of the fourth floor. And part of that's done for security reasons, but it also shows you how easily things can be compartmentalized. So you could easily get a block of people within the FBI hatching a plot or whatever and executing the plot, and a large portion of its own organization has no idea that they're even doing this because things are so walled off. There's a need to know, what do you have clearance for? Even within our systems of record, you have different levels of access based on what exactly you work for the FBI. So, I mean, if they wanted to create a walled off, scheme, they could. Yes, I don't want to be like Debbie Downer, but I'm always been a realist. And it's like, people are like, oh, you're so negative. I'm like, no, I'm just real, man. Like, you need to be prepared. Like, you just need to be prepared for whatever's coming. Like, I hate to tell you, like, I hate to shatter your matrix that you've created for yourself, but This is the reality of the matter. It's like I tell people, I'm like, you're going to die and
Yeah.
you are going to see Jesus Christ. Like, that's who you're going to come face to face with, is Jesus Christ. It's not going to be any of these other, deities or gods or whatever. Like, the person you will come face to face with, besides, your guardian angel being there on your side, either looking somewhat happy or maybe looking somewhat sullen, you're going to come face to face with Jesus Christ, who is God. Like, God literally took on our form, became man, and walked amongst us to save our sorry hides from eternal damnation. That's that nullus diabolus, nullus redemptor I mentioned
Yes.
early on. Yeah, so the villain is the evil one, the adversary, Satan. Like,
Yeah.
he's real. Like, real person, not a human person, but a real spiritual being. I'm going off on a tangent here, but
I
when
love
people,
it. It's
when people talk
amen.
about when people talk about aliens, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, but I don't think about aliens the way they do. I think about demons. I'm like, they're alien to us. They are spiritual beings, but they're not human. So
Yeah.
technically, they are alien to us. So people are like, what do you think about the aliens, or what do you think about that? And if you get into, studying Christianity and whatnot, especially spiritual warfare in the spiritual realm, you become familiar with what the demons actually can do, like the power of the air, like our battles against the powers and the principalities. Like, these fallen beings have a lot more power than we do. It's only by the grace of God that they're not completely running amok with the place right now. Their ordinary work is to mess with us and to tempt us, but we have to give our will over, and we have to, comply with whatever things are tempting us. Concupiscence, our natural fallen state. So, I mean, I think, a lot of this is like, we could really help people out with evangelization. The whole idea in society where people are like, oh, that's great, Christianity works for you. And my stance is like, nah, bro. Like, this isn't oh, that works for you and that's what helps you get by
Yeah.
thing. Like, no, dude, this actually is real. Like, this
This is
is the
real.
real.
Yes.
As real as we're sitting here having a conversation, like, knock on the
Marcus,
table, like, it's real, dog. Like, I love you. I feel you. I wasn't always in the faith like this. I had my, 10, 15 year stretch out in the wilderness where I was lost doing my own thing. But you got to feel me on this. Like, you need to get right with God, because you are going to die and you
it
will see Jesus, and he will say, how come you didn't get with the program? I gave you 55 years. I gave you 80 years. I gave you 23 years. And that's the thing, too. We don't know the day or the hour when our time here is done. So you need to be always prepared.
is so
It's
refreshing to
scary.
speak with you, because
Like, this
usually,
isn't a cute for me situation.
yeah, it's so refreshing because I'm so used to trying to I'm aware of, I was in the wilderness for a long time, Marcus. Speaking of, I was in the woke faith and religion for about 20 years, and I was very anti-God and anti-Christian, and I never thought I would become saved. But God kept working on me and loved me, and by the grace of God, I got to a very dark place. Anyway, I don't have to go into my whole story, but I am now very aware of who I used to be. And so sometimes on my show, I try and help. I'm like, I don't sound like, you don't want to come off like a crazy Christian. But it's because I know the old me would be like, that's so weird that you would say, but it's true. And I love how open and honest you are about it. Like, this is true. This
Right.
is,
It's
you are
true.
going to meet your maker. You are going to meet Jesus.
It's
Like,
true.
these are, yeah.
It's true.
And you're
It's not,
unapologetic about it. And I love it.
it's not crazy. It's
Yeah.
radical.
Yeah.
The difference is the difference between us and the Muslims, the radical Muslims at least, is we're not going to force you to that point by the sword. We're going to give you an argument. We're going to give you an explanation, but the choice is yours. You have
Choice
free
is
will.
yours.
That's why evil even happens in this world, is because of free will. People are like, how could a good God allow this? I'm like, because free will. Like, he
Yeah.
doesn't want automaton conformists. Like, he
Yes.
wants
Like
you to
robots.
freely choose this. He wants you to freely love him. The offer is there, but you have to decide whether or not you want the offer. And the radical and also the sobering thing is, when your eyes close on this side of eternity the final time and you open up on the other side, he's going to honor your decision radically. And how many people are going to have really sullen and sour looks on their faces when they realize, oh my gosh, it was all true,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't submit to it. I wouldn't surrender my will and my selfishness and my me, myself, and I, my this, my that. I'm not doing this. I'm going to do whatever I want to do, blah, blah, blah. You didn't surrender that. And now you're living life eternally separated from all that is good and right and true. And oh, by the way, you're going to be spending that time with fallen angels who hate your guts and want nothing more than to increase your torment. And their work is to keep you separated from God. That's their work here on earth, is to keep you separated from God. Once you realize that, then you can just start looking for that hallmark in everything that we get presented as human beings. You look at every movement, every ideology, every belief system. If it's moving you away from the God of Abraham, then it's not good. But you have to assent to that. And that, for me, I consider myself of, average, maybe slightly above average intelligence. But the thing that puts me over the top is faith in God. And by having faith in God and sanctifying grace, he points me in the right direction. I pray. That's essentially having a conversation with God. You're talking with God. You should pray every day. Have constant conversation with God. Just make it real. Like, we only make it weird because pop culture has told you it's weird. Most people know there's a creator. They just don't want to comply. They don't want to have to abide by the rules.
They don't.
Or like little children. I don't want to.
I don't want to. Or they're kind of, my pastor talks about it as growing up in this this current world where this post-Christian world where we've sort of been inoculated against faith, where it's like, that's not cool. We've already rejected that, and a lot of people that think they've rejected it or think they know what Christianity is and they've rejected it, like myself, like I used to be, don't really know what it is. You're rejecting something that you haven't fully explored. You're just kind of, you're this world that we're in is inoculating you against the thing that's going to unite you with the creator and point you towards truth, love, life, all those things. It's just infinitely refreshing to speak with you. By the way, also, you're being humble, and I'll just say you're definitely above average intelligence. The Dunning-Kruger effect doesn't just say that below average intelligence people tend to overestimate their intelligence, but a lot of times people who are of higher intelligence underestimate their own. This is true. That's part of Dunning-Kruger. Or they underestimate it, and not even just to be humble. They're smart enough to be aware of how smart they're not.
Right.
So,
how much you don't know.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
So you've been so gracious with your time, and I just have a few, like a speed round of questions I wanted to ask you. Yep. And these are from some of my smartest friends, and I have like 4 or 5 of them. And if it's one that you don't want to answer, you can say next question.
I would try my best to answer. I would try not to be a politician here.
Okay. Now, this first one, I think you may have already answered for the most part, but I'll read it out. So, do you still believe in the mission of the FBI, and do you feel that the agency's been corrupted beyond redemption? And do you believe that anyone at the top of the FBI will be held accountable for actions taken since 2016? You sort of answered that already.
Yeah, I believe in the mission of the FBI. I don't think we have the personnel to get it done. If they want to maintain the mission set, which I would advocate for, then they need to literally have like a tear down and a rebuild. And the problem with the administrative state is it's very difficult to do a tear down. I'll give you a quick example. My wife used to be a supervisor with the organization. She had problem employees. It took her 2 years of administrative paperwork before she was able to get those people just reassigned, not fired. One of the cases, the person probably could have been fired, but they were reassigned, and they were fighting her the whole way. Interestingly enough, one of the people she ended up getting reassigned several months afterwards came up to her and thanked her and said, I was in over my head in that other role, but I really enjoy the role I'm working in now. So thank you. The other person always held a grudge, but they were still able to maintain employment in the organization, just in a more administrative role versus an analytical role. So it's extremely difficult to get rid of people. Now, with that said, the director's role does have a lot of leeway in getting rid of people. it's a tough road to hoe. I think it should be raised to the ground, and the responsibilities it has farmed out to other agencies. So the mission set is good. I don't think they have the right personnel to get it done. I don't think they're actually going to be able to actually really punish anybody for what they did, which is why they attempted what they did in the first place.
Yep. Okay, next question. We hear a lot of conspiracy theories, but just how capable is the FBI when it comes to all these things that they're accused of doing? How much of this is possible versus how much is crackpot thinking?
There's a lot of dead wood in the FBI, but there also are a decent amount of highly capable people within the walls of the FBI. I used to tell people some of the best people I've ever met my whole life I met in the Marine Corps. Some of the worst people I ever met, I met in the Marine Corps. So likewise, like there were people at the FBI, I'm like, I'm not even sure how you got here, which you could probably say for a large chunk of the workforce. But some of the smart folks I ran into there are highly intelligent folks, which is why you need morality as well.
Yes.
Because if people are going to just simply do what they're told or just follow orders blindly, not really, what they're doing is they're rationalizing lesser goods. So they're looking at their own family. Well, if I do the right thing, then I'm going to suffer. Like there's an aversion in American society to do the arduous good. This whole
Yes.
me first crap is really a poison, which is destroying our society because now it's bleeding over into all facets of life in our society, even the security realm, which you should be sacrificial. You know, especially you should be sacrificial in nature anyway, but especially people working in security, national security, defense. There should be a sacrificial nature, and that's gone, in my opinion. It's a very low percentage of people left in there, if any, who have the idea of I'm going to bleed out and die for the flag. And that to me is the scariest thing. Is it's like we have a cultural, spiritual, human soul problem. Like,
Yes.
and that's a lot harder to fix. And especially when people don't, oh, I'm not doing that Jesus thing, when literally the gospel of Jesus Christ, if I like as an intel guy, the actual tactical solution to fixing our intelligence community is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Like there's human intelligence, and so there's things that you weigh in, like psychology, philosophy, all those sorts of things. Like there's human intelligence, there's signals intelligence, there's imagery intelligence, all these different ents. And part of the human analysis thing is you're looking at the ideology and the mindset of the people. Well, for our security personnel, they are not motivated by doing the arduous good enough. They will just put their heads down and take care of their little family unit, not recognizing that that lack of sacrifice and suffering for righteousness or for the arduous good is going to cost them down the road. So they think they're helping their family right now in the immediate, but what they're doing is they're really setting up a huge loss within a 5 to 10 year window if things keep marching in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think of Hebrews 12 and about, you know, how much the people who've come before us have sacrificed and how much the prophets and how much, you know, sort of like we need to think of it as you're in a long distance race. It's not like a short sprint. And you're talking about people making choices for a short sprint and versus long distance, I think.
Right. St. Paul, run the race well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. I would love to know about his view on Antifa. There are some who consider the FBI to be ideologically in bed with the modern day brown shirts, and that's why they have not dismantled them when they could roll up the entire organization the same way they did the mob. Also, so that's, I'll ask you the second one. That's the first one is what is Antifa?
Yeah. So Antifa stands for anti-fascist. I believe it had its beginning, its origins over in Europe. I want to say Germany, and it's kind of bled over here. I know more about like their tactics. I'm not recalling their ideology the greatest right now, but they use black bloc tactics. They're usually leftist in ideology. They're not averse to violence. Golly, some of them are anarchists. They stand for chaos, but they don't really have a plan for the back end after the chaos ensues. So that's probably I'm just giving you how I looked at it
Right.
tactically. That you probably can speak a lot better to what it is.
Well, I know
I have books, but I've like forgotten.
Oh, that's okay.
But yeah, I mean, they use black bloc tactics. They're usually more the leftist anarcho philosophy. My approach with them, the FBI very much took a hands-off approach to them during the summer of 2020, which got the ire. This is the thing. There's a lot of people in the FBI who know there are problems, but there are very few people in the FBI who are willing to do anything to actually fix those problems. So a lot of the personnel there took ire with our approach during the so-called Summer of Love in 2020, when the courthouse was set on fire out in Oregon. Other federal buildings were attacked, assaults on police officers, destruction of property. There was very much internal to the FBI kind of sit on your hands approach taken with the quote unquote Summer of Love, which was a lot of the ire that got stoked when January 6th happened. All of a sudden, the script got flipped to where, sit on your hands, don't do anything, even though there's destruction of government property and assaults on officers, to, hey, diddle up the metal, go get them, get every grandma, grandpa, whatever you can get, and then headquarters, Washington field office was quarterbacking a lot of the cases, which was really weird. There were just a lot of weird anomalies with the whole investigation. So there was a lot of ire from folks within the organization, but most people still just complied. They just obeyed and did it. And so there very much was within the walls, at least within the decision-making portion of the FBI, there was a sit on your hands approach with the Summer of Love 2020, Antifa, BLM, other agitators. Not everybody that was, BLM was out there acting a fool, but there were some, good amount. And we were basically told to sit on our hands, and all of a sudden January 6th happens and they're like, go get them. And it's like, it's grandma. She had no idea she was even in restricted space. Like she was just on the grounds. Like she didn't even go into the Capitol or assault anybody. Like, what are we doing here? So for me as a terrorism analyst, I'm like, okay, we're sending a shockwave of fear. Like, are we being used to intimidate the American populace into compliance? So there's that worry as well. So yeah, I think ideologically there are a lot of progressives, and there's a lot of vain careerists and opportunists within the walls of the FBI. I would say there's more vain careerists and opportunists than like leftists, but there's a large chunk of them, and they seem to influence and sway things internally. There's DEI stuff within the Bureau where management, if they want to get, they have promotion packages that they put together if they want their promotions, and they go to so many of these seminars and whatnot. It's like a checklist. It's like things that you have to have participated in. So there very much is ideological influence of the leftist nature going on within the walls of the Bureau. How much of that is getting curtailed now? I don't know specifically. I just know that the director and the deputy director can kind of be kept in a bubble with bubble wrap if the rest of the outfit wants to keep going the direction they want to go. What happened, the way, there's also an expression in the Bureau: if you've been to one FBI field office, you've been to one FBI field office. So the way FBI Charlotte runs is not the way FBI Miami runs, is not the way FBI Chicago runs, is not the way FBI Phoenix runs. Like each of them has their own. There's like an overall dominant bureau culture, but then each FBI field office has its own internal culture in and of itself. So it's like basically 56 little fiefdoms with federal authority and intelligence related powers planted across the country.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleep well.
Sleep well.
Yeah. I'm on a list till 15 years past dead, so all good.
Okay. Follow-up question. And this is kind of a follow-up to the first one, and I sort of asked you about Kash Patel a little bit already, but they want to know, what is your take on Kash Patel and Dan Bongino? Are they out of their depth? Have they succumbed to the deep state? Are they actually doing things right, which just take time?
I think I think they're probably in over their head a little bit.
Mhm.
Dan's background, uh, law enforcement background, Secret Service, but the FBI is such a unique animal. You really need, if you're going to navigate it, you really need bureau insiders to help you navigate it. Um, so obviously, the spat and beef or whatever they have with the other guys who've been canceled, Kyle or Garrett or Steve or whatever, Phil, there's a number of them. Any of these guys, have helped them, or have provided advice in the past and that sort of thing of how to fix the bureau and get things on track. Like whatever beef, like you got to put that to bed. Like you got to get people who honestly want to fix the place, like in there, regardless of whatever punches in the face you may have taken, social media. My stance on that is iron sharpens iron. Like I come from a Marine Corps background. Like
Mhm.
Marines are pretty blunt with one another. Like if you're not getting it done, you're gonna find out real quick. So I would just say like, don't worry about the optics. Don't worry about what the media is going to say about it and the nature of your relationship. Don't worry about anything other than getting the job done objectively, regardless of you know, personality. Like, hell, like invite them up to DC and have dinner and drinks and just be like, yo, dudes, this is what's going on. The fear is there's a charm offensive launched internal to the organization as soon as they got on board to like paint those of us who got canceled as just miscreants or losers or people with character issues and that sort of thing. But people with character issues don't put everything on the line for the country to the point where
Yeah.
your families are getting financially destroyed, and they have to take that into account as well. It's like dude, they attacked us. Like I have trauma, like my wife has trauma, our kids are traumatized to a certain extent. At least one of them was old enough to fully realize what was going on. The younger two have caught on to what's going on. They're like, life has not been normal, for our family for about 5 years now. From the beginning of the pandemic to me getting persecuted to testifying on Capitol Hill to airing out all the corruption. It's like the American people can't waste what we as public servants have done for them. Like we've given you a window into how corrupt this thing is. You can't just go back to sitting on your duff and clicking your heels and hoping that, a couple of, your favorite popular personalities from the last 4 years are going to be able to get it done all on their own. This is like a full bore, full tilt effort. So public pressure on the FBI will start moving the dial. Like it's a
Public.
gigantic problem, but like those dudes are really good investigators. They're really good. I mean, I've talked to several of them. We're all friends. They're really good investigators. They're really good at running sources and finding out stuff. They're not the problem. You have a lot of fat cat SESers in there who don't want their gravy train to stop, and they're not going to be the ones to put it on the line for the country the next time something diabolical comes down the line. You need people who are full of piss and vinegar and fight in there, fill in those ranks if we're going to right the ship, especially, specifically just talking about the FBI. I don't want
Mhm.
cream puffs in there.
Yeah.
Or greedy people.
It seems like with their ideological bent and their willingness to sacrifice people like you and to target you and victimize you and throw you out and put you on this leave, come up with some bogus reason. For those who are tasked with the job of cutting people who are just adding weight, like I would, can't they look at what, look, they've, on the flip side, there's been this willingness to just let great people go for ideological reasons. Like, how hard is it to, you gave me that example of like moving people around rather than firing them, like problem people. How hard is it to just say, we're going to make some necessary cuts, and it's going to get bad press probably, but I don't know. This is just
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of red tape, but the director role does have a lot of leeway. They're probably just really worried about, a bevy of lawsuits on the back end of people, arguing wrongful termination and that sort of thing. And it's like, are we going to do that? And then these people are going to argue wrongful termination and get their jobs back 2 or 3 years later, or the government's going to be on the hook for large payments to these people. They don't come back. Now the government's writing checks to people for,
Right.
$1 to $2.5 million a pop for each of these people that, like, the bloat, like, this is a process. This is why I said, like, the evangelization thing is kind of the answer. But that will require the government to actually acknowledge that is, rather than just putting on, the Christian cloak for clicks and likes and votes, to actually then start conducting itself in a manner according to Christian principles outside of just like, oh, separation of church and state. And I'm like, we can be animated by Christian principles. Like, the majority of the founding fathers believed in Christ or were Christians themselves. There's multiple quotes from the founding fathers themselves saying, this Constitution, this country is built only for a moral and religious people. It's unfit for any other. It depends upon an educated citizenry. It depends upon the populace being involved. So it's like a lot of those things have gone by the wayside. I mean, a lot of this thing is really fueled. It's like moral goodness is like the fuel for our system of governance to run well. Like, you need good humans in order for this to run well. And not ideologues, out for their own selfish personal gain. You need service-oriented people and not there to serve themselves and their egos.
What a great way of putting it. Moral goodness is the fuel for the engine of liberty. How about that? I'm
right.
That.
Yeah. Yeah,
no,
that's good.
True.
That's what it is. Yeah. It's liberty
true.
versus license. True freedom being assent to the will of God. God's will for you is better than, God's plan is better than any plan you have for yourself. So go with God's plan. Liberty is true freedom acting in accord with moral goodness and righteousness versus license, where you just want to do whatever you want. Like, license is not liberty, so people, stew on that. Have your audience stew on that. Liberty versus license, to go out and do whatever you want to do, just this kind of reckless, secularist hedonism,
Yes.
That's what's taken over. You do you, boo.
That's freedom. You do you, yeah. Freedom where you actually, it's so much freedom. There's no boundaries, and then you just become a slave to searching for more. It's like the people who have tried every taboo and they're looking for the next high or the next taboo, and they're just a slave to it. And because there are no boundaries, there's no flourishing.
No.
It's a constant pursuit of the next thing.
God made you. That is literally the answer.
That's the answer.
He's trying to give you the blueprint.
That's how, when I first came to Christ and I started reading the Bible, Marcus, I had what I now think is a funny moment where I started reading it and I'm like, so this is basically like a shortcut. Like, like, don't lie. Okay. I wish I had read this.
Right.
It's like a guidebook. Oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah, people look at it like restrictive rules rather than this is you and this is how you operate. If you stay within these guardrails, you are going to flourish. That's why I have them here. This is not to restrict you. This is so that you flourish to the best of your ability.
It's because I love you. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. I've got 3. Do you have time for 3 more rapid fire?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I'll try to answer quickly.
Okay. Do you think Patriot Front is an FBI op?
I think it has some kind of government affiliation. Yes.
Okay.
I won't say FBI specifically, but I do believe there is likely some government affiliation there.
Okay. Do you think Nick Fuentes is an FBI informant?
No.
Okay. And lastly, this one, what about the Epstein files? Do you think that this is something the public should focus on demanding an answer, or is this a distraction and there are more pressing things that when it comes to, like, you said we need public pressure for accountability? Is this one of those fights or are there others that we should focus on first?
Yeah, turn up the heat. The thing that they respond to is public pressure. The people don't realize how much power they have. Like if you just dial up the public pressure, if you get away from the inoculation of, your favorite coffee from your favorite coffee shop, and your favorite takeout, sitting on your couch watching your favorite Netflix show, if you can get rid of those drugs and start paying attention, just turn up the public pressure, get a coalition of people together, you dial up the pressure, and that's what's going to force them to move because they're going to have to eventually respond to the will of the people. So like these charm offensives that you see from the FBI, or these quick hits on mainstream media of like, justice is coming or this or that is happening. There needs to be less of that and actual tangible results. And the actual healthy thing to do would be to tell the American public, like, look, these are legal cases. It's going to take time, and we don't even know if they're going to be 100% successful because there's so much corruption in the system, and we're dealing with corrupt human beings that are probably going to be actively fighting against us and arguing against the arguments we're making, that you're not going to see justice in the short term like you want. Like, this may take a year and a half, 2.5 years, and it may not even happen. So I think that's the adult thing to do, instead of like, I think doing the whole pep rally thing of like, justice is coming or don't worry about that. It's like, dude, they're talking about the trafficking of children and really powerful people abusing children for their jollies, and then potentially intelligence organizations involved in this process to achieve leverage over these really powerful people who are then affecting policy in the nation in which you live. Like, yeah, you should give a crap about that. That's not a nothing to see here type moment. Unfortunately, what's likely happened is there's probably a lot of stakeholders involved with the whole Epstein scenario, and they haven't been able, this is my assessment, they haven't been able to get buy-in from all those stakeholders to air everything out because they're worried about the potential fallout of what airing that information out is going to do. And it'll probably be pretty ugly, as far as some of our allies are concerned, because all the intelligence, all all the adversaries, allies, everybody spies on one another. All of our intelligence organizations are spying on one another. They're working with one another on certain things. On other things, they're spying on one another. So it's like there's probably going to be some really ugly information that comes out about reported allies or countries that we're typically allies with that are going to be probably very unsettling. There's going to be information likely about very powerful people that's unsettling, and they don't want to drop that bomb, which for you and me, as believers in Jesus Christ, we would say, just do the right thing and let God handle it. But that's the issue when you have power, is you then start thinking that you become the supreme arbiter of the good yourself. Like, well, if I do this, then I can avert this. And what if this happens and then it destabilizes this? And I have to do this. It turns into, I have to do this evil, or I have to tolerate this evil, or this greater evil could happen. Like, don't do that. Just do the objective, righteous thing to do in that moment. And you say you have faith in God. Let God sort it out. Do you actually have faith in God, or are you just putting God's cloak on for a political campaign? This is the real test for people in power. You can do a lot of good, but if you don't do what God wants you to do at that critical juncture, you can still be damned, or things may not turn out as great for you as they could have turned out for you. Like, for example, what was it, Moses and Aaron? God said, I'm butchering this here, but Old Testament scripture, for non-Christians, Old Testament scripture, Moses and Aaron, God tells them out in the desert when the people are wandering after they've escaped Egypt. There's a point where the people need water, and the message from God is, go talk to the rock, and water is going to come out of it. And I'm butchering this. This is my layman's interpretation.
Yeah.
The instruction is, go talk to the rock and have the water come out. Well, they strike the rock with the rod, and then the water comes out. God's like, you didn't do exactly what I wanted you to do. I gave the people water. I told you to talk to the rock, not strike the rock with your staff. Therefore, you will take the people to the edge of the promised land, but you yourself will not enter the promised land. You will die before you ever enter into the promised land. So there's a severe punishment. God loves both Moses and Aaron, but like he's punishing them for not doing exactly what he told them to do. So like my message to really powerful people would be, if you have an inspiration from God to do the absolute most righteous thing that you could do in the moment, but you're terrified of what the fallout's going to be, don't worry about it. Give it to Jesus. Like,
Yeah.
let it happen. Like that, the fallout might actually be what needs to happen in order to heal the country. If people feel massive pain, that's the thing. We're so pain averse. We're so like, oh, I have to shelter everyone. I have to protect everyone. Like, you have to be kind to people. You don't have to be nice to them, and that's what we've lost. What is kindness? You tell people the truth, even if it hurts, right? Or you let things happen, even if it looks like there's going to be pain. So the solution might be painful, but that might actually be the solution. So do the right thing, regardless of what you think it's going to do, fallout wise, because if somebody reacts negatively, that might just be the devil getting revealed where the devil needed to be revealed, and someone you thought you were cool with, turns out you're actually not so cool. So would you rather keep faking the funk with like this pretend relationship, like you're really buddies? Or would you rather that those wolf's teeth come out and everybody be horrified and in shock and suffer the fallout of seeing those wolves' teeth revealed and like, okay, well, we got to deal with this now. It's going to force a whole lot of people to mature very quickly. What do they say? You got to be educated to be that stupid.
Yeah.
It's going to force people to look at things very black and white, very plainly as they are. So yeah, the Epstein thing, that shouldn't go away. Like raping kids, trafficking kids,
Keep
they're
the
trying to
pressure
make
on.
that. They're really trying to get rid of that thing, and I think it's because there are stakeholders who don't want that thing aired out, and they're trying to abide by that.
Yeah.
Which is, does that really serve American interest or not?
When you were describing the way that all of these different intelligence agencies and powerful people operate, and how sometimes they're working together on something and they're allies, but then they're also spying on each other and stabbing each other in the back. But then they've got, it just made me think of like Desperate Housewives or something. Like it's like they're friends, but they're not friends, but they are. And I don't know.
Frenemies.
Frenemies, yes.
Right.
You are just full of the fire of the Spirit, and it has been so refreshing speaking with you, Marcus. And I wanted to ask you before I let you go, wait, before I ask you the final meaningful question, I have a follow-up about one thing. This is going to nag me. If I don't ask you this, I'll be like, why didn't I ask him? So I had in my rapid fire question about Nick Fuentes, do you think he's an FBI informant? And you said no. Here's my question. A lot of us are talking about that video of him on January 6th, where he's outside of the Capitol. Do you know what I'm talking about? And he's like telling,
No.
Oh, okay. There is a video of him telling his followers to go inside. And a lot of people have speculated that he must have made some deal or something happened, because he didn't get prosecuted, but a lot of his followers who went inside did. And so that's why people have that question. And I know the whole reason they targeted you is you were disagreeing with their public statement about there being no federal operatives there that day. And so that's why I was curious. But okay.
Right. Yeah, that's subject to change,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This is my final question then, is how do you maintain, I saw a great clip of you talking about don't let people steal your joy. And you probably can't see it from this frame, but I have here behind Jesus. Let's see if you can see it if I do this. There's a cross stitch that a viewer made me. It says, "Not today, joy eater," because I have come to the same conclusion about when the woke cult, a lot of them, they're just joy eaters. They're always trying to steal your joy, but that's not confined just to the woke left. There's joy eaters everywhere. So final question is, how do you maintain joy while being quote unquote black pilled and aware of reality?
You maintain joy by realizing that Earth isn't the final destination, that we're supposed to make it to heaven. Now, not everybody does make it to heaven, unfortunately, but that's how you maintain joy. You know that Jesus already defeated death on the cross. He came back from the dead, the resurrection. He even demonstrated during his life here on earth that he could bring people back from the dead. And, he's incredulous or shocked when people still don't believe. It's like, I'm bringing people back from the dead. Why do you people not believe that I'm the Son of God? Like, how many other people around here are bringing folks back from being in the grave for, 3 or 4 days, And even amongst the apostles, they're like, no, not you, Lord. Like John, obviously John the Beloved was there at the crucifixion. So John probably reasoned, like, we brought all these other people back from the dead. He'll just come back from the dead himself. Same thing with Abraham and Isaac. If I kill Isaac, God's just going to revive him and give him back to me. So yeah, our victory has already been won. Don't fear death. That's the thing. You have to have fear of the Lord. And that's the thing I feel, really sorry for people outside of the Christian faith is they don't have the fear of the Lord. And so they're running around in a state of fear. And really with the whole COVID thing was a compliance test. Like for me, I knew I was doing the righteous thing. And I had the thought in my head, even if it costs me, it's all good. Like I fear the Lord. I don't fear man. I'm like, okay, they're going to come for me. They're going to try to cancel me, whatever. Like this isn't the final destination. So yeah, that's how you not let people steal your joy. You focus on the cross. You focus on the promise of the cross. Like Jesus himself tells you, I'm not the prince of this world, which means that essentially God's given the evil one time to reign here on earth, but Jesus shows you how you walk that walk here on earth. He's like, do my will, do you love me? It's going to be okay. I'm going to pull you out of the ground on the last day. So don't be afraid of dying. Don't be afraid of death. Fear God. Don't fear the one who can destroy the body alone. Destroy the one who can destroy both body and soul in eternal hellfire. That's the Almighty. Don't worry about what the demons or what fallen creatures inspired by the demons are going to try to do to you. This needs to be real for people. I know you probably have a lot of audience who don't believe in God or have a weird relationship with God. Yeah. The advice I would give you is just say a prayer when you wake up in the morning, and then maybe again at night, is God, if you're there, I don't believe this. Please help my unbelief. Mm-hmm. And just say that prayer constantly, morning and night. When you wake up, God, I don't believe this. Please help my unbelief. And God's going to convict you. He's going to give you some signal grace. You're going to have either some kind of dream or vision, or you're going to have some encounter in your life that you weren't expecting. Something out of the ordinary is going to happen that's going to strike you. And the thought is going to cross your mind, is this it? Like, is this the grace? Is this the message? And it may be God speaking directly to you. It may be something that you encounter in nature, or it may be something that you encounter through another human person. And when that invitation comes, just take it and run with it and just keep taking leaps of faith. That's the thing. Like God, he's testing you. He wants you to take a leap of faith. He wants you to do the right thing without you knowing how it's going to work out. And see, we as humans, we always want control. Well, I'm not going to do that because I don't know how that's going to work out. Don't worry about that. Is it the most righteous thing that you can do? Then do it and then go on the adventure with God, because God will take you on an adventure if you keep saying yes. Like I'm a regular, like cube dwelling, like government, analyst cog who's now, people know who I am to a certain extent because of the testimony. There's a lot of print stories about me, a decent amount in, podcast world about me. My story could still explode even further. And at the center of the story is God, is the Holy Spirit, and being animated by faith. So that shouldn't be strange, shouldn't be weird. It is quite literally the answer for your life. So challenge yourself. And it'll be a journey if you choose to say yes. And you're going to lose a lot of people that you care about. You will. I guarantee you will. There are going to be people that you're going to lose, but God's going to put other people in your path. And he's going to put you on a mission, and you just got to keep saying yes. So yeah, I'm challenging you. It's difficult. The prayer is, God, I don't believe this. Please help my unbelief. When you wake up, before you go to sleep, and then look for the message.
I love it. Thank you so much, Marcus. That's where the faith comes in. The part where you're saying, like, do the righteous thing without knowing. And we humans, we want control, but God wants us to have that faith. And like, if you do the righteous thing, I will show you.
Yeah.
Like, follow my path. You are so inspirational. I'm so honored that you appeared here on Deprogrammed. Is there, if people want to follow you online, do you have an online
Yeah,
presence?
if they want
Or
to follow me online,
Mhm.
I'm not a prolific poster, but I post sometimes. I'm on X at praywithmarcus, and
Okay.
then it's at praywithmarcus. And then you could also follow me on Substack. Same thing, Pray with Marcus. I post more reflections there. And then I'll probably post some First Amendment and surveillance state related stuff coming up in the future.
So Pray with Marcus, we have both of those links below. You guys, please go check it out. And thank you for being here today. Please let Marcus know what you think in the comments, and have a good day, sir. God bless you.
Love you all. Thanks, Keri.